Hello and welcome to The Kaiju is in the Details. I'm Ian.
I'm Haru.
And today we watch The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms from 1953. What'd you think of this one, Haru?
We're done with monkeys and it's time to start looking at lizards.
No more monkey business. Are we allowed to say that one now? Can we finally say monkey business? There's been a moratorium on monkey business jokes, I think. But now we're fine. Now that we're no longer in the monkey zone.
Yeah, probably.
It's our first lizard, our first reptile in the pit, the tank, the Kaiju's in the details.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of it, though? I must know.
So, I understand fully why you included this movie in the list, because it has a lot of similarities with Godzilla, right down to the use of nuclear bombs. And
folks, it's a Godzilla. This movie, it's a little bit of a Godzilla.
and ending with getting the National Guard involved and
the National Guard is like the Japanese self-defense force when you think about it.
Yeah. It's like we have the National Guard. We've got the U.S. Self-Defense Force plus like a few other branches that Japan doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. This is I feel like in particular this one's going to resonate with fans of the American cut of the Godzilla movie, because there's a lot of explaining things that doesn't happen in the original Godzilla movie. There's plenty of explaining things in the original Godzilla movie, to be clear, but there's a lot of explaining things that don't happen on screen that happens in the American Godzilla movie because they cut it to make more room for Americans. And I think this film also has a little bit of that, particularly in the beginning, because it starts with a monologue, which is like not something I'm particularly a fan of in movies. I don't know about you.
Like,
I just like start your movie.
It like the other kaiju films we've watched didn't really like explain when it opened. It just did the plot. Like it just did the plot.
Which is good filmmaking, IMO.
But this one had to like do the whole setup, and like the characters aren't important. What's important here is what's happening and why.
It is now H-hour.
Yeah.
Operation Experiment, the nickname for this operation. Terrible nickname, by the way. Terrible operation name. Operation Experiment. Fuck off.
Yeah, they're like monologuing this whole like we're gonna drop a nuke in the Arctic and see what happens, because you know the time frame where like we were obsessed with testing nukes.
We're in 1953. The bombs have dropped, and baby, we're gonna drop more of them.
Yeah.
But now everyone's starting to get like feelings about it because they're seeing what's coming out of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they're like, seems kind of fucked up. Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So apparent like you know we love blowing things up. It is like our favorite pastime as humans. And then it turns out it can have consequences.
Who could have thunk?
It turns out if you make a big enough explosion, there will be terrible side effects that no one could have foreseen.
Yeah. But yeah, this is our first nuclear kaiju, although it's not particularly nuclear in the details of it.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of dropped the nuclear thing pretty early in. It's not like Godzilla where it's got powers from the radiation.
Yeah, like they could have just changed it to just be a regular bomb or like it could have been like a napalm bomb. And
I was literally thinking like during the movie that if this movie was remade today, it would be a climate change story.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the ice caps
definitely.
melted and this creature was there.
Yep.
It even has a virus. That's like a big news item these days, is that we keep finding like prehistoric versions of viruses and bacteria in frozen ice caps.
Yeah, like it's like so as I was watching the movie, like I was just sort of like analyzing the dinosaur and like, okay, how scientific is this movie gonna get? And then it turns out the dinosaur has a bunch of like viruses in its blood that we humans don't have any sort of resistance to because it was frozen for 10,000 years or whatever. Or like no, it wasn't 10,000. It was like several million, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was. They didn't. I don't know if
But
they had it because the dinosaur that they
yeah.
picked here, the Rhedosaurus, is fake. That's not a real dinosaur.
Yeah, no, it didn't look like any dinosaurs.
And they
um
have this drawing of it too. That's supposed to look like the drawings of dinosaurs of the era, and they have a bunch of those too. And they have this drawing of their fake dinosaur amongst all these other ones, and it looks like distinctly different from the rest of them. I couldn't tell
mhm.
you why. I think it's just because it has stronger outlines, but it's very funny every time they show it. And like they show it as like a jump scare, like what?
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Um, but
Um
I think this one is very interesting. It's a very interesting movie. This definitely is a step up from Mighty Joe Young
oh yeah.
and Son of Kong. I think we're more into King Kong territory, frankly.
Yeah. I would
Less racism too.
yeah, because they didn't have
They
any
didn't have
black
any.
so at all, so they can't
Yeah,
be racist.
if you don't have any diversity, you can't be racist against them, I guess.
Yeah.
Although they had some foreign people at least. They had some
They
from some
they
Quebecois.
yeah, they had people that spoke
The main character has an
French.
accent.
That's true, yeah.
I thought that was really interesting that the main character just like has like a vaguely European accent. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't place it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell either. I couldn't tell if it was like a fake, just sort of made up
Ah, he's
accent, or if
Swiss.
it was act. Oh, there
The
we
actor
go.
is Swiss. Paul Hubschmid,
Huh. That's
or
kind of
as
neat.
his stage name is Paul Christian.
So we have some white diversity going on in this movie.
Yeah, we got some white diversity, the best kind of diversity. Oh man, stupid. um,
And
but it was
also,
still surprising to see that kind of thing because a lot of times people with accents don't get roles.
yeah,
But I guess a German being playing a scientist, an atomic scientist, no less.
yeah.
It's kind of typecast, perhaps.
Um, Meanwhile, speaking of like demographics and roles, we have like no significant women in this movie. Like there's the one scientist lady who's like the paleontologist who's like in love with the other paleontologist guy, but like
Uh, are they? I thought they
I
were just a assistant professor with
I
a little
thought they
bit of
were in love
smooching.
because they kissed a few times.
Just a little bit of smooching. Don't you
Yeah,
smooch your professors?
I mean, I I guess I don't know.
Because it very much seems to be a because he says that scientist guy says like I don't want to get in the way of this like love affair between you and the other doctor, the nuclear physicist guy.
Uh-huh.
So she was like the love interest for the nuclear scientist, our main character,
Yeah.
Professor Nesbit is his
Yeah.
name.
Still though, it yeah, she didn't really play a significant role. Like she existed to kind of move the plot forwards because this guy was about to like give up on trying to track down this monster
Well,
and
she does connect the dots on the second sea serpent and like being like, no, this is actually something.
yeah, no, like that's what I
She has a
mean.
larger role than a lot of women
Like
we've
that
covered.
yeah, that's what I mean though. Like she's there to help move the plot forward. Um but like
And then of
it
course have this
kind of
romance with Nesbit.
yeah I don't know. To me, she felt somewhat insignificant. Like her, like I feel like the movie wouldn't be that much different without her.
Mm.
Like I get that, like the nuclear scientist guy was like, you know, about to just sort of give up hope on like trying to track down this monster because the paleontologist didn't believe him. But then she's like, wait a minute, I think we got something going on here. We should actually follow up on this. And that gave him his motivation back, which was, you know, that drives the plot forward. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. To me, she just
Well, she
felt
also does the
kind of insignificant.
she pulls out all those drawings of dinosaurs for him.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of a cute scene too. I actually kind of dug the romance in this one.
Mm-hmm.
It felt more like a real romance than any of the other ones we've watched for
That's
this
true.
podcast. And
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of fun banter, just like in the movie as a whole, and so the romance has fun banter too.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Yeah,
the
I can
writing
see
in this
that.
movie is probably one of the better ones we've watched. I think it's better than King Kong even, and that was probably the best one before then.
Yeah.
It's I see your point though. I don't think she definitely takes a back seat immediately after that scene though,
Mm-hmm.
where she's like no longer in the movie basically.
Yeah. She has like two important scenes, and then she just kind of is just a supporting character after that.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because I do think this movie really actually excels at its characters. Um and having more of her in the movie would have made the ending a bit more satisfying because the ending is very abrupt as we are
Yeah.
getting used to in these films. And without any like actual resolution to her storyline, it kind of feels like she did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But I did like her at the beginning of the movie though. I think she plays just at the beginning of the movie she plays a more significant role than any other woman in any of these other movies we watch.
Yeah. I think so. Like, it's kind of like the movie in the first half of the movie, it really focuses on developing the characters and um like the story is about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
Which
second
is funny because the movie starts off saying it's not about the people, it's about the things they're doing.
yeah. But then the second half of the movie it's like the characters don't matter anymore. The only
The
thing that
dinosaur takes
matters
over.
is the dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's her
It's
favorite character.
it's reminiscent of oh man, I'm gonna kick myself when I remember who wrote this. There's a book about slasher movies, which coins the idea of the collective protagonist, which is the collective protagonist is everyone who is a victim of the slasher in a slasher film. So like the group of characters
Mm-hmm.
who becomes the victims of the slasher. That's what happens like halfway through this movie is like all these characters we've come to love in this film become a collective protagonist that
Yeah.
works together ceaselessly. And the transition point, I can point to you the exact moment it happens: the death of the kindly paleontologist professor.
Yes.
That's when the movie changes.
Yeah. Yeah, cause like yeah.
Because like and up until that, everyone has like their little character quirks and they're having fun and they're
Mm-hmm.
doing little bantery things and they're talking and they're doing stuff. And the movie walks at is not a extremely brisk pace. A modern audience is still going to think it's a little bit sluggish, but it's still pretty steady pace. Um, but then the professor dies, and a whole bunch of like ideas are dropped from the film entirely, and then also everyone kind of is a one unit protagonist against the dinosaur,
Yeah.
and that's where the movie kind of loses me a little bit. Even though I like the dinosaur scenes, the dinosaur looks quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. It, it's it was a shame too because like I liked the professor. He was a fun
He was a lot of
character.
fun. He was a
Um,
lot of fun.
he was just vibing when they dropped him down in the bell. He was just like, "Oh, we're having a great time here. Oh, look, we found some of the local residents,"
He
referring
just
to
keeps
like an
yapping.
octopus and a shark, and like, "Oh, the local neighbors are having are having a spat."
He's like me when like like everything's quiet and I'm with someone and we're just like not saying anything and I just start going, so uh this thing happened. Uh, just trying to fill space, you know.
Yeah,
But speaking of that, those neighbors, uh, that scene was sucked.
yeah.
So the shark and octopus were very clearly in a tank. They were in a tank that was being filmed outside of the tank, and they were
Hmm.
shoved in a tank together to fight each other. And the shark is like latched onto an octopus's arm, and the octopus is like going struggling against it. It sucks. It's not good.
Yeah, and it kind of goes on way too long.
It goes on way too long. Yeah. Uh, Animals were harmed in the making of this film. Don't you worry about it.
Hmm.
uh, I and this is actually an important thing to mention too because um, you'll notice that there's not any underwater filming in this movie,
Yeah,
but there will be in
makes sense.
Godzilla
Ooh.
because Ishiro Honda, the director of Godzilla, is a was a innovator of underwater filming in Japan. So he actually, before Godzilla, had experience. He created he filmed a movie about pearl diving, about pearl divers, and he innovated a lot of techniques for underwater photography, underwater filming for movies. So he's going to use those skills in Godzilla, and we're going to get to see that. And it's going to be really cool.
Exciting.
But yeah, we have in this movie we have a bathoscope diving bell that is very clearly not in water. It's a very much a toy
Hmm.
with a weird background. We have a dinosaur model that's very much a clay monster that is not in water.
Hmm.
And we have two underwater animals that are in a tank that is being filmed, which is yeah, not no underwater photography here. But speaking of the effects, let's talk about the effects because I think the effects in this one were generally quite nice. Um,
Yeah. Um.
Ray Harryhausen is stepping up from Mighty Joe Young to do some quite good work here.
Yeah. So, like,
This this dinosaur looks a lot better than Mighty Joe Young did.
oh yeah. Um. I think my favorite effect in this movie was when the dinosaur picks up and eats that cop that's shooting at it.
Of course it is. A cab.
Like that was also just genuinely such a cool effect though. Like,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it worked pretty well. I think my favorite was probably the destruction of the lighthouse because it showed a lot of thought into how a lighthouse would look if it was torn apart by a dinosaur. Like
Yeah.
there's the ladder hanging out from the side after the top has been ripped off.
Hmm.
It was really neat. It showed a lot of thought and like precision put into it. Um, which I cannot say the same about most of the screening effects. The screening effects in this one are not very good.
Yeah.
There's a pretty bad one right up at the beginning of the movie where they're on a snowmobile and the background looks like nothing. It's like a matte painting basically. It might be
Hmm.
a matte painting, frankly. But the creature, generally speaking, looks pretty good. It doesn't do a whole lot. It has like a couple of big scenes where it does stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they use that one clip of it walking over and over again.
And like another effect that kind of struck me was the one where I think there was only one scene where the dinosaur was like specifically crushing a car,
Oh yes.
and like the car was very clearly made out of clay.
Yeah,
But
he kicks the car and it bends like rubber.
yeah,
It's not good.
um, but it was still an interesting effect, even though it was very clearly not an actual car.
Yeah. Although the scene with the where the dinosaur is for some reason attacking a roller coaster, every time it bit off a piece of the roller coaster, it looked quite nice.
Yeah,
I wonder if the roller coaster was built in miniature as well and it was just ripping off pieces of that. But even
that
then,
could
the
make
force of it
sense.
looks right? Like the force of it being ripped off looks correct. So that's still
Yeah,
impressive.
like honestly, so at that point in the film, I wasn't even really paying attention to the effects anymore. So like to me, it just looked like he was eating a roller coaster, and like
For some reason.
I guess that just means that the effects were doing their job.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't notice the effects, then that means they're doing their work. That motherfucker was chowing down on that amusement park, though. Holy shit.
Yeah.
He really wanted to eat that roller coaster.
So here's like that brings me to something that I've kind of been wondering throughout this movie is why is he attacking literally everything? Like
I think the idea is that it's because it just came out of hibernation for like millions of years, which by the way, no. But
yeah.
we don't need to worry about like reality. We're talking about giant monsters.
Yeah, like the implication is that he's gonna be severely hungry after coming out of the ice.
Extremely malnourished.
And so I guess he just has to put everything he can into his mouth.
To make sure it's food or
I
not.
guess it's. I just
But why
I don't know.
why does it
Like,
keep eating the roller coaster? So it's like over and over again.
but like it feels so like
Generic.
there are plenty of ways he could have gotten food between the Arctic and New York, like the fucking ocean.
Like the octopus and shark that he ate.
The ocean is full of food. At that point, the dinosaur is no longer ravenously hungry, and now he's just like now the dinosaur can just vibe and be a dinosaur.
Well, he
But
still wants to return to New York because that's his spawning ground. Remember, that's where the fossils were found, which makes the question of why he was up in the Arctic in the first place. But maybe it's a migratory dinosaur.
maybe it's something with like glacial movements or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it could have been like he was extremely horny and that made him tear up the place. I don't know.
They didn't mention that for some reason, but that's possible.
Well, like, cause yeah, I'm just trying to logic out this science fiction movie that's barely science fiction.
Yeah, you're thinking too hard about the things that don't matter. You got to think about what does matter, like how funny it was when the operator on the phone was really mean to the scientists for no reason, and to that captain.
Yeah.
There was the captain, like, or the our lead character, our scientist man Nesbitt, is like convinced he saw the dinosaur. He's trying to like find other people who saw it to like corroborate the drawing that he picked out, and he's like going to all of them, but he calls one of them, and then that guy hangs up because he doesn't want anything to do with the dinosaur anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the operator's like, that guy's a freak.
Yeah.
So he's such a grump. Oh my god.
Yeah, very professional operator.
So weird. I'm glad we don't have operators anymore. Fuck that shit. I don't have to talk to someone to talk to someone. Come on.
Now all we have to do is talk to robots,
True.
because there's no person on the other end that actually wants to talk to us.
True. Oh, speaking of effects, going back to the effects, going back to the effects, and going back to the tank where we had that shark and octopus. That shark and octopus fight got interrupted not very like it took a while for it to be interrupted, but it was interrupted by the dinosaur eating them both at the same time, just like swimming up to them and going, "Oh."
Yeah.
And the way they accomplish this in the film is one of the worst effects in the movie. The Rhedosaurus eats the shark and octopus the same way your dad eats your toys, by taking it and shoving it past them, past their head on the other side of your vision line.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
like
it
come
was
on.
it did not sell me. Like
It was not good. It was probably the worst effect in the movie.
maybe
I have to
that's
imagine-
why. Maybe that's why the dinosaur is so hungry, because he literally forgot how to eat.
You can't eat anything. All you can do is fake eat things. Oh. God, it's so weird. I would have just not included that scene. Like, if that scene looks so bad, I would have simply cut it.
Yeah.
Like, just have the dinosaur appear. Don't even worry about finishing that fight. Nobody cares about the fight between the octopus and the shark. It's not a particularly big shark either, I should mention. It's about the same size as the octopus.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I should mention it, but does anyone actually care? Or you watched the movie. You don't even need to tell you that. You, the audience, watched the movie, didn't you?
Did you do your homework?
What about I guess we could get into themes. I don't know. We kind of covered everything. The movie's not it's not a bad movie. It's just like there's not a lot to talk about, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean,
it is what it is. Like it's a lot like Godzilla, but with less of the horror. Like the what's the best way to put this? Less of the realness, I should say, of the horror.
mm-hmm.
Americans did not live through the nuclear bombing of their homeland, so, and also the nuclear thing gets dropped super quick.
Yeah,
and it's just like a dinosaur attacks film after that.
Yeah, so like we see,
so it loses its like core immediately, essentially.
Yeah, like because we see a bunch of people running away, and then the National Guard comes in, and then they like briefly have this thing about when they finally manage to injure it. Oh no, the blood is infected. Keep it away. And like
Kaiju films like to do this for some reason, where it's like, if the creature is killable, which again, a lot of kaijus are not just straight up not killable, but in the ones where the creature is killable, which is usually like Western ones for some reason, I'm sure there's a way to analyze that.
We like
deeper,
killing things.
We like to imagine that our military is capable of killing everything.
Yeah.
But like this even happens in like Danish films. Like we're gonna watch Reptilicus at some point. But there's this like we're like, okay, so the creature is theoretically killable, but you got to kill it in a specific way.
Yeah.
Or else it'll be worse than if you tried to kill it the normal, like if you just didn't try to kill it at all. Right?
Yeah.
This happens a lot in Western films for some reason. I don't know exactly why. I guess it is probably just like we are so convinced in the superior power of our Western military, which you'd think would be more of an American thing, but I guess it could travel over to Denmark as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like a boss fight, they have to ramp up the weapons that they're using. They start with the tiny bullets, the like pistols and rifles, and it's like, oh no, the skull is too thick to penetrate. And then they like get bigger and bigger guns until eventually they finally manage to land one single wound on it. and then it's like, okay, now we need
Second
to
stage.
second stage of the fight. Okay, now we need to get our most skilled sharpshooter to shoot this radioactive isotope into its wound. You only get the one shot, otherwise we're screwed. So no pressure or anything. Good luck.
Let me really quick list all the similarities between this movie and Godzilla.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we start off with an atomic test. Atomic test awakens a monster. The monster is a reptile that comes from the sea and rampages through a major metropolitan city.
Mm-hmm.
A professor dies underwater. The creature does not like high voltage wire, but it doesn't stop it for very long. The creature cannot be killed through conventional means. Is that everything? I think that might be everything. Oh, and the creature looks really bad in close up. They have a couple close up shots like they did in King Kong, and they still don't look very good.
Uh-huh.
And that's not going to get any better with Godzilla. Sorry to say.
Yeah.
Although, well, I guess it gets a bit better, but it's still not great. Just don't do close ups of the monster's faces, folks. We don't need it.
Yeah.
Or at least I say this. It's fine now. We don't have to worry about it anymore. But like 1950s folks, don't do it.
Sometimes the illusion is best upheld from a distance.
Or in the dark, like the lighthouse scene. The nice silhouette of the monster
Yeah.
really worked.
Oh, actually, I just remembered another effect I forgot to talk about. The effect of the dinosaur attacking the boat.
Oh yes. That was another one of those, like, it's like one of the scenes. They have like a couple of there's a couple of scenes in the movie where it's like, oh yeah, they spend a lot of time and work on this scene in particular. You can tell. And that's one of them where it's like just stomping on that boat.
Yeah, and just like with the car, the boat does not behave like a boat.
It behaves a bit more like a boat than the car did like a car, but
yeah.
It's I think inanimate objects kind of be a hard one, even though it's like you would think it'd be easy because they don't move by themselves, but like that means they don't move like rubbery, stuff like clay is, you know.
Also, another thing, like, I kind of want to mention, slight change of topic here, is the pacing of the movie, where, like, the first half of the movie is this very slow build-up. They see the monster in the Arctic, and then, he's the only guy that's seen it. And then all of a sudden there are like a couple more sightings, and then it's like, oh, but no, still no one believes him. Like, paleontologist doesn't believe him. And then he has to like work up to get this evidence, and like that's when the lady helps him, and then like finally they have the evidence to convince the professor that like, oh, maybe we should look into this. And then, like, there's a few more people on board, and then finally, like, that the professor sees the monster with his own eyes, dies, and then all of a sudden everyone knows about the monster, and like, then we get the second half of it.
Everyone in the entire world knows about the monster all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And the professor also immediately dies. Like, it's such a weird death. Because it's just like the Rhedosaurus eats the shark and octopus, and then the professor's like, "Oh, there it is," and the guys are like, "Hey, do you want us to pull you up?" And he's like, "No, I want to see this shit." And then we have like two scenes of the Rhedosaurus coming closer and closer, and then all of a sudden he's just eaten, and it's like, I guess Rhedosaurus ate the whole fucking diving bell somehow, and it didn't choke on it.
That was another scene that kind of bothered me with trying to understand, like, the logic of the film, because, like, it feels to me like the monsters shouldn't have even really paid much attention to the diving bell at all. Like,
Well, he did pay attention to the dining bell.
yeah. Like, you're in the ocean. There's hella fucking food around you.
I don't know. It's the New York Bay. Come on.
Yeah, I guess
Everything's dead there. It's the 50s.
Yeah, that's true. I guess
It's all trash.
But then, where they get the octopus and the shark? Oh, they were in a fish tank. Never mind.
Yeah, they were in a fish tank. Well, in a completely different area.
But yeah, no, like it was.
I don't know. The diving bells move around with the waves, so they could theoretically look like something. I'm not super bothered by that. I'm more bothered by the fact that the professor did not ask them to pull up at any point. He sees a fucking dinosaur coming towards him, about to eat him, and he doesn't ask them to pull it up at any point. Like, not even too late. I would accept if he asked them to pull it up too late.
Yeah, like he says, "Wait, pull us up," and then the call gets cut off, and then it's like, Professor, pull him up, get him
like,
up.
Legitimately, here. Because we didn't have that, I thought it was just going to be a fucking fake out.
Yeah, like,
because it didn't feel like right.
It felt anticlimactic in a way,
especially for a character who is like so charming.
Yeah, like there wasn't any, like it wasn't even a clear, defined, precise death. It was like I
guess he's dead.
We tried to pull him up and he wasn't there. Okay, well,
it was like we tried to pull him up and then we cut to a newspaper saying he was dead.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, sure. and that's also, it's also weird because that's where the tone of the movie completely changes.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, here's where I get into my thing here. So before that moment, the professor was talking about how we need to capture the creature alive for science. This is going to be a common theme in kaiju films. But as soon as he's dead, that thought completely leaves everyone's mind.
Yes.
And also they stop acting as individual characters and as one collective protagonist. But
like, if like this paleontologist was like, oh, I wouldn't dream of killing this thing, but if we could somehow manage to find a way to capture it, that would be like a historical thing for science. And then what happens is he dies, and then like,
no one mentions it again.
Apparently, the best way to memorialize this scientist who was like a pioneer in this discovery is to murder the thing he specifically said not to murder.
It's never brought up again. Never. Like, not even as a passing thought.
Yeah, like, literally no one even thinks about capturing this thing. It's all about killing it. Like,
the dinosaur walks through the city. A police cop walks right up to the dinosaur, starts shooting. The military arrives. They start shooting.
And
the scientists don't protest. The assistant to the paleontologist doesn't protest.
And I guess maybe the reason for that is that the message the movie is trying to tell us is vengeance is the right answer.
Well, I think the message the movie is trying to tell us is that who gives a shit about science? This is a fucking dinosaur.
That's true, but
the safety of the people is worth more than the scientific discovery.
Yeah, like, I don't know, just like we're avenging the people this dinosaur killed, and like we're protecting our land, I guess. Cause
I think it's more of a protection rather than a vengeance thing. I don't think they give a shit about the people the dinosaur killed, because they don't seem to. Except for the one paleontologist. Otherwise, they don't seem to give a shit.
Yeah, this is the National Guard after all.
Well, except for the one moment where they're like, this is the worst disaster in New York history.
Yeah.
Fucking 9/11 brothers over there. But I do think
never forget the time New York got attacked by a giant dinosaur.
That's true. Never forget. We have a Remembrance Day every year. But I do think there is something to this idea of the movie trying to push that like scientific advancement isn't worth the harm that it causes to people.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the opening of the movie is this atomic test, we're even though we drop the atomic angle pretty quickly in the movie, there's
Yeah.
still this aspect of the dinosaur as the atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because like the movie, like, we have this like moment where the military guy, the main military chief, is talking with our main character and his scientist friend, and they reference creating the first chapter of a new Genesis with the atomic bomb,
Yeah.
and then the other one says, or the last chapter of the old one. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope we don't make the last chapter of the old one, and then they unleash a dinosaur, you know.
Yeah.
So there's definitely this aspect of this anti-nuclear idea. It's just not as fully developed as Godzilla would do it, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
because of the perspective of a 1950s American as opposed to a 1950s Japanese person, right?
Yeah.
Especially like a pacifist like Ishiro Honda.
Yeah. The movie is conceptually aware that nuclear that the use of nuclear bombs is bad to some degree. Is It's just like the actual horrors of it are kind of lost on the movie. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like, cause like it at least understands how nuclear bombs work, right? Because like when they wound the beast, the people are ill from the virus in its blood, and like that's very clearly supposed to be a metaphor for like radiation. Um, but like it feels like that's barely touched on.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a plot device to explain why this thing is hard to kill.
Yeah, it's something where the movie gestures at it but doesn't fully commit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
um what'd you think of the music in this one?
Music was fine.
Yeah,
Didn't stand out to me in any way, but it wasn't bad.
yeah, yeah, it's fine.
The
It
sound
does.
design in general was kind of hard to keep up with, just because like this rip of the film had terrible sound quality.
Yeah, it was not the best. I was tempted to find another one while we were watching it because it was just not great. The music is the reason why I mentioned the music is because this is fairly influential monster movie music. It's going to be really influential for American monster movies going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to just like think about it. But again, it's not particularly of note. I would say it's serviceable, but it's I don't. Wikipedia calls it powerful and memorable, but I don't particularly remember anything about
I
it,
would
frankly.
not use the word memorable to describe this music. uh, yeah. I mean, I guess powerful.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah,
But I would say powerful is a pretty easy thing to obtain. All
yeah,
you have to do is get enough horns together, right?
yeah.
Yeah, this is it, it's oddly generic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like a good generic, right? It's like sometimes a generic brand works just fine, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of that. It's not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but I liked it a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of fun with the dialogue, the creature effects, and everything else was just kind of there.
This movie is just store brand Godzilla.
Yeah, but
It's
it
like, hey mom, I want Godzilla. Mom, we have Godzilla at home.
yeah. And the thing is that this is what inspires Godzilla. Like without this movie, Godzilla, as we know it, does not exist.
Yeah.
At least it took a lot of inspiration from this film. I'm not going to say it's the entirety of what inspired Godzilla, but there's a lot of inspiration from this film
Hmm.
in Godzilla.
Like,
Obviously, King Kong has a lot of influence as well.
and like that's also a good point, because like we've been comparing this film a lot to Godzilla, but like the reality of it is, like, we should be comparing Godzilla to this film. I think, because like this is where a lot of those ideas come from.
For sure. Yeah, I think this film is interesting just as a window into like what was around, and that's like the whole reason why we're doing like all these movies before we get into Godzilla. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is the idea of creating this context. Like we're understanding where kaiju film as a genre was before Godzilla hits the scene, or like maybe not kaiju film as a genre, because maybe kaiju film as a genre didn't exist yet,
Mm-hmm.
but monster movie fare was before Godzilla hits the scene, right?
Yeah, sort of like the precursors to kaiju. Like,
Yeah, although King Kong's pretty kaiju at this
yeah,
point. It's hard to argue that King Kong is not a kaiju considering where we're at in the Hollywood system of Godzillas.
yeah. We just like big things that fight each other. And what are the two most famous big things in film history?
Monkey and dinosaur.
Yeah.
uh, is there anything in particular you'd like to hone in on at this point?
um
I have something actually. Um, so there's a moment after our scientist protagonist is at the hospital after his injury in the Arctic.
mhm.
The nurse like hands him a newspaper, and he's like, "Is there anything in there interesting in there? Like what's going on in the world?" And she's like, "Oh, death and politics. The comics page is the only thing that makes sense anymore." And then the comics page is where he first learns about the sightings of the sea serpents.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really interesting way of I guess it's foreshadowing for something that happens like immediately afterwards, but it's
Yeah.
a funny little juxtaposition where she's like, the funny pages are where the only place where anything or it makes sense anymore, and then it happens to have the thing that gets him back on the sea serpent train, at
Yeah.
least temporarily.
And also, it's like, it also kind of makes a broader commentary on, you know, stuff that's considered real is like, just like, like politics and stuff is like, it kind of gets lost on people sometimes, whereas like, real life, like, not saying that politics isn't real or life changing, but like real, like, major tangible events are kind of the ones that capture the attention, like, capture attention.
Mm.
um I don't know, that just
Yeah.
a thought with like that, the like meaning behind that line and the broader, like, what it's trying to reference.
Well, I think this film has a fascination with the disbelieved.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is the best way to put it, because
Yeah.
it's there's this line that gets repeated a couple of times of well, are you so sure that that doesn't exist? Um,
Yeah. And like,
Nesbitt, like when Nesbitt is talking to the paleontologist is like talking about blah is green the creature from the lock, the green serpents of whatever, these are the other things, and then the Nesbitt is like, well, are you so sure that those don't exist? And then when
yeah.
that same paleontologist is talking to the major, the major's like, there's all sorts of things like that, little green man, UFOs, and then he's like, well, are you so sure that UFOs don't exist?
Yeah.
And it's not just this like just specific dinosaur. It's like an appreciation for the appreciation for the cranks out there.
Yeah,
For the unknown, I guess is a more polite way to put it.
Appreciation for the cryptids. You know, maybe maybe Sasquatch is real. Maybe we should believe people more when they claim they saw a monkey in the woods.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a particularly strong theme of the movie, but it is something that comes up frequently, and I think it's interesting.
And like, you do make a really good point there, because like, when I was talking earlier about the pacing, like that was kind of something I was getting at, but I didn't like outright say. It was like when they're kind of building up to this monster, like when people don't believe him, the reason they don't believe him is because this is all like, we're used to people making these fictional claims and they all turn out to be hoaxes, or and then this is like the one instance where like actually all these quote unquote hoaxes are pointing to something real,
or at least this one hoax is actually real.
Yeah.
And maybe the others are. Ooh. Yeah, this film is sympathetic to the crank. It is sympathetic to the kooks. You know, I don't know if that's like, I don't agree necessarily, but and that's the thing, is like this fictional movie is like, oh yeah, the people who are making up fictional monsters, they're telling the truth this time. It's like, yeah, okay, you're a fictional movie though. So what is that? How do I apply that to my life? Right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like they're making up a guy and getting mad at them. Except in this, it's the other way around. They're like making up a way in which their argument is correct and then getting mad at people for not believing them.
Yeah.
But again, it's not particularly strong. I think it's just like a side effect of how this kind of movie has to exist.
Yeah.
Because like nobody's gonna believe a fucking dinosaur. Like, to make it realistic, everyone has to think like, oh, you're crazy for thinking a real dinosaur exists.
Yeah, I don't think this movie is trying to like send the message of you gotta believe your crazy neighbor.
No. It just happens to send that message by accident.
Yeah, because that's
like a lot of these movies do.
Yeah, because that's just the way that it tells the story. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, no one's gonna believe you when you say you saw a giant like a giant dinosaur, because like they're extinct.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Like a lot of monster movies and kaiju movies as well reinforce this idea of believing in the conspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of problematic. It's a little bit problematic because a lot of conspiracies are, well, okay, a lot of conspiracies, when you dig down deep enough, are just anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Yep.
Bigfoot isn't, but like reptilians are, or you have like if you want to have like a really relevant example to this exact movie, the living dinosaurs. Almost every cryptid that is a living dinosaur is kept in the popular consciousness specifically by young Earth creationists to prove their ideology of a young Earth theory of creation, to manifest their holy reality upon the rest of us. If what the hell is the name of the one dinosaur in Africa? The something umbele, something like that. And someone in the chat, someone in the audience knows, leave a comment on the YouTube page.
You who has access to Google.
Yeah, I do have access to Google, but I don't feel like Googling it right now because I'm on a roll. That creature is mostly propped up by young Earth creationists. And that's the thing about a lot of cryptids. This is why I'm kind of uncomfortable with cryptids as a whole. Is quite frequently a lot of them are the products of some weird right-wing ideology. And that's like something you got to be careful of. I think the least harmful one is probably Sasquatch, but even then, a lot of people like to pretend Sasquatch is a Native American myth, like a Native American figure of lore, and it's not. It's really not.
Because that's the that's kind of like the other side of the coin with cryptids, is like taking pre-existing myths and legends and taking them vastly out of context and corrupting them and commercializing them.
Mm-hmm. Now, to be
Like,
clear, this movie does none of that.
yeah. Yeah, no,
But
we're
it's
we're
just like
just on like a
something.
tangent about cryptids right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, yeah, it's just something I think about a lot when it comes to the cryptid, and this movie does endorse that kind of attitude of believing these kind of people who do believe that kind of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and it's not just this movie, because a lot of them do, and I do wonder how much of that comes from movies like this. But I also just think it's just part of the trying to make these stories realistic, is you're gonna have to make a guy who's just a fucking nutter, or looks like a nutter to the outside,
Mm-hmm.
and that creates tension, because now it's like, is it real or is he just imagining things? And then,
Yeah.
like how when's the creature going to strike next if it is real, you know? So it's like
Actually,
a natural storytelling facet, but it's just, it's like a little bit of a problematic message by accident.
and here's a thought. Um, when was Lovecraft? Was that like the 30s,
uh
20s?
I don't know. I am looking.
I'm pretty sure Lovecraft came before this, and like
Yeah, he
it
was.
kind of follows a similar.
37 is when he died, so it would have
Yeah,
been like 20s, 30s.
it does follow a similar trend to ideas that are kind of Lovecraftian in a way, where it's like, um, this horror that literally no one's going to believe you that exists, and you just got to listen to the crazy person who saw it down at the dock one day and lost his mind or whatever. And like, oh, it turns out crazy old Bill was right all along.
Yeah, it's, again, not a huge deal. I
Yeah.
want to stress that I feel I sound like I am making a mountain out of a molehill. I promise you, I am making a molehill out of a molehill. I just think it's a little bit uh problematic, but that's it. That's really it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I think this film is mostly about about atomic weapons. Like, it's just like not particularly good at that
Yeah.
messaging.
It's an American perspective on atomic weapons.
It's like a lazy American perspective on it, because it doesn't really want to engage with the topic at all.
Yeah.
It kind of just wants to have that as a backdrop to have a cool creature stomp through a city, right?
Hmm. I mean, so I guess in a way, there is like one part of the whole nuclear bomb theme that I think is kind of poetic with the film, is the way it bookends it, because it, like, the movie opens with like this whole thing was caused by them dropping like testing a nuclear bomb in the Arctic, and then the whole thing ends with them using a radioactive isotope to kill the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And like it kind of, it's got that, like, that mirrored parallel bookending the story. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of wraps things up nicely with a bow. I don't know entirely what kind of message they're trying to send with that. Like,
I don't think there is one, frankly. I
yeah.
think they just kind of chose. So this is the 50s. Radiation is like just a buzzword in a lot of ways, and
Hmm.
I think this movie in particular also causes radiation to be a bit of a buzzword. In sci-fi films later sci-fi monster films in particular, I think them also involves radiation too. We start getting a lot of radioactive creatures in the near future, a lot more radioactive than this one that we have here as
Hmm.
well. Um, and I think we're gonna we're gonna deal a lot more with radiation in future films. But I think this one just kind of used the isotope as a get out of movie free card.
Gotcha.
I don't think they were really trying to do anything with it, because it was just like, it's a radioactive isotope. It'll kill it and this virus.
Hmm.
That solves all our problems that we wrote for ourselves.
Makes sense.
I don't think there is anything else to it than that. It just doesn't feel like there is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess if you wanted to read into it, it would be like the only way to stop a bad guy with an atomic bomb is a good guy with an atomic bomb. But I don't think that's what they're going for.
Yeah, no. Like the direction I literally thought they were gonna take the movie was the only way to stop this thing is to nuke it. Like, and they end the movie by nuking New York City. But
I don't think that would have flown.
yeah,
I don't think that would have passed the sniff test.
um,
And I
yeah,
think we're gonna see like a better version of this in Godzilla. Everything in Godzilla is a better version of this movie, but
mm-hmm.
it's we're gonna have an ending that is essentially replacing the atomic bomb with a new thing that is stronger than the atomic bomb. But in this case, it was like the same thing. It's like if the Redosaurus represents the atomic bomb, then you killed it with a radioactive isotope, which is also part of the atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the idea is that it's killing it with nuclear power. Like nuclear power is stronger than the atomic bomb. I don't know.
It, I think you're right that it was literally just like 1950s. We don't
Yeah.
know how any of this shit works.
And also, we need to end the movie right now because we're out of budget.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No.
Speaking of,
The
go ahead.
ending was very abrupt. Like the 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 movie just ends when the monster dies.
Yeah, it just sits on the monster's corpse, and then that's the end. No wrap
Um.
up, no conclusion, no nothing.
Like
We get like one kiss on the cheek from the lady onto the guy before he leaves. We don't even see him get back to the rest of the crew. We just see the dinosaur die.
yeah. I will say it's still a better ending than Mighty Joe Young, and still a
Yeah.
better ending than Son of Kong. But that's not
Yep.
saying much.
I would say King Kong has a better ending.
Yeah.
Original King Kong does have a better ending because you get that it was beauty killed the beast line, and that's like iconic, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that. Like King Kong actually feels like the movie ended.
This one's just ends. It just stops
It's
showing
like,
movie.
okay, what happened
The-
in New York? What?
I think that's another reason why we're having trouble finding like what's going on in the movie as far as
Mhm.
themes go, because there's no conclusion to like conclude those themes.
Yeah, and this movie leaves a lot of questions unanswered. Like, what happens to the people who were dying of the virus? Like, do we just now have a pandemic on our hands? Is there no cure to this virus, and just the world gets infected by this dinosaur blood? I don't know.
Sure, why not? That's for you to write your fan fiction about. Um, I don't think the movie's particularly interested in the disease other than a way to complicate the plot to make the dinosaur runtime go
Mm.
up. And once the dinosaur dies, that's all the movie is. Like the movie is a vehicle to show you this cool dinosaur that Ray Harryhausen made
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And the fact that
He
the rest of the movie looks so good, or is so good rather, outside of that is a miracle.
he just made the dinosaur as a class project and was like, we gotta make a movie around this so I could show it off.
I will say, this movie is partly based on a Ray Bradbury short story.
Mm-hmm.
You know Ray Bradbury, yeah?
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451.
Oh yeah. Yep. I know him.
Yeah. So he wrote a short story. It was published in a paper, I believe. And then they partly based this movie on that. The same name, by the way. Feast from 20,000 Fathoms is the name of the Ray Bradbury
Mm-hmm.
short story. If you want to read it. Um,
I wonder if that's where I recognize this title.
it's possible. But yeah, this is the how do you feel about having seen our first atomic monster?
I'm feeling
Not very atomic.
Yeah. I mean,
Kind of an underwhelming start for an atomic monster, but
it it leaves a lot to be desired, but it at least is getting me pumped for seeing some better ones, more
This
exciting ones.
film made a lot of money. $5 million worldwide. Highest grossing film, one of the highest grossing films of 1953.
That's money, Hollywood.
Money.
Turns out, there's a lot of money in kaiju films.
I do think this is like, obviously, Mighty Joe Young is really important for Ray Harryhausen's career. I think this is where his career really hits its stride, because this one is a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, no. You listeners, if you are listening to these episodes back to back and you just got done with the Mighty Joe Young episode, here's the summary. This movie is a whole lot better.
This one I would actually suggest you watch if you're interested after listening to all this. Jesus Christ.
Using your five senses to
engage in this podcast.
Are you licking your phone? But yeah, no, it was a refreshing watch compared to the last two movies we saw.
This one has some meat on it for sure.
Yeah.
There's actually stuff to think about with this movie, that this nuclear annihilation or like stress, this nuclear what's a good word for it? Gloom and doom.
Yeah.
Distress maybe. And this like
anxiety.
There we go. Yeah. I guess like we're gonna see New York destroyed quite a bit. It's always gonna be big cities. They don't. I guess they will destroy small cities from time to time, but they'll like. The thing about kaiju is that they tend to waltz through small cities and move on to the big ones.
Because it's not satisfying to see like Hopesville destroyed. You gotta see like New York and Tokyo and London, or like
France.
All
of France.
Just all of France. Like
just destroy all of France, Godzilla.
Yeah, like it's much more satisfying to see skyscrapers topple.
Yeah, although we didn't see anything topple here, except for that roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, he did break through a wall.
That's true. The Rhedosaurus is just not big enough. We need to get bigger.
Oh, we also saw the lighthouse topple.
No, that's true. Not a skyscraper again. I must put my foot down. Not a skyscraper. But if you're looking for a fun movie to just sit down and watch, this one's not a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
Any parting thoughts? Any parting shots?
This movie's getting me hyped for Godzilla.
Well, you got a long way to wait for that, my friend.
Darn.
Next time we'll be watching
next few episodes.
No, I don't think so. Next time we will be going into 1954, the year of Godzilla, but we're going to be starting in May 21st of 1954 with The Monster from the Ocean Floor.
Ooh.
That's right, folks. First we got the one from 20,000 Fathoms, and now we're going straight to the ocean floor. Hopefully it'll be as satisfying as The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, or perhaps better. You never know. It might be better. Hopefully it won't be a Son of Kong.
We'll have to see.
But until then, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy. I said watching again. Listening. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, why don't you rate us on whatever podcast app you're using? We're on all of them now, except for iHeartRadio, because that one just won't work for me. You can, follow us through our individual Twitter accounts. We don't have like a group Twitter account for this one, but you can find me at Thempire Ian everywhere. But you can also find this podcast here on my separate channel, Them Pod, Ian. Isn't that clever? Haru came up with it.
Yeah.
Where can people find you though, Haru?
You can find me at Haru Haze. That's Haze. Pretty much everywhere. I am on Twitter, though I've since pretty much completely stopped using it and moved over completely to Blue Sky.
I've been using Blue Sky a lot too. It's nice.
And I'm also over on Twitch, and we've got a Discord that Ian and I both share. I think that covers my socials.
Yeah. So you can check us out anywhere of those places. If you want to leave a comment, find the YouTube channel. That's Them Pod Ian. You'll find all the Kaiju and Details episodes there. And other podcasts that I do in the future. I've got one in the works. Hopefully it'll be out soon, maybe around the time that you hear this episode. And make sure to give us those ratings and share the podcast around with your friends, because that's really the best way to get these podcasts out to people. There's no algorithm to help us. We have to really get the word out, and getting you guys to do that really helps us.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it if you do that. I think that's it for us, though. I guess it's time to say goodbye. Sayonara, Rhedosaurus.
Sayonara, Rhedosaurus.
Still a fake-ass dinosaur name.